Hey everybody, welcome to Monster Monday. For Monday, April 12th, 2021, I'm your host, DM Gallibond, and tonight at long last, after 5 weeks, we are getting to the end of our mini-series on Goblins. Gosh, I bet you guys are happy to be seeing the last of these Monster Monday shows on Goblins. We'll be getting back to something completely different next week, I promise, and we'll tease that a little bit at the end. This particular one is how are we going to use goblins? One way, how can we use goblins as the campaign antagonists all the way from Tier 1 of your campaign through Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4 of your campaign? You don't think it can be done? I beg to differ. And I'm going to show you just one way you can do it. You put on your little thinking cap, and you're going to be able to find many, many, many other ways to use goblins and goblinoids as the antagonist for an entire campaign. All right, I'm your host, DM Gallibond, and before we get started, we want to send a special thanks out to Mo over at the Tabletop Bellhop. He's the OG when it comes to all things tabletop games. He has all of your tabletop game needs covered. Anything from buying the games to learning about the games, industry news, new games, game developers, game studios, classic games, board games, party games, card games, you name it, and an entire galaxy of people that are creating media about the games. So podcasts, streams, news reviews, playthroughs, all that kind of stuff. So go check out Mo over at the tabletopbellhop.com. And tonight, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to look at how you can use Goblinoids as antagonists in the various tiers of play for D&D 5e. So help us experience the Goblinoid antagonists in the same way that the PC will experience them, getting to realize more and more depth to their opponents and peeling back the layers, better understand what's driving and motivating their enemies. And at the end, we will summarize the campaign in a way that the DM would sort of get a synopsis as one prepares to run the campaign. All right, so let's start off by looking at Goblinoids at Tier 1, or Goblinoid antagonists at Tier 1. All right, so your party starts, as is the case in a lot of parties. Your PCs will start in the village of Frontier Town. Frontier Town is where? It's out on the frontier, the very edges of the known world, where beyond the maps are as much myth and conjecture as they are actual explored space. You are on, or Frontier Town is on the verge of what is known as the Civilized Federation. It's a confederated, allied group of kingdoms composed mainly of humans, elves, dwarves, gnomes, and then there's a liberal sprinkling of hobbits all throughout that area. And they are good folk. They have civilized warfare among each other. They have politics. They have industry. They have agriculture. They have magic and invention. They are, in short, the good guys of your campaign. Beyond, who knows what lurks out there. All right, so when we think of Frontier Town, what kind of town are we thinking of? We think about Lost Mine of Phandelver. We think about the village of Hamlet in the Wayback Machine, out on the edges of civilized lands. And we imagine the first few encounters with goblins being very similar to those in the Lost Mine adventure, where you have a group of goblins, a small band of goblins, in a hideout that have a few like wolf allies, and then they're led by a bugbear. So there's one kind of boss guy there, and then there's a bunch of sort of low-level goblins, and right off the bat, your characters are having to deal with them. So the first notice that your PCs are going to have of something being wrong in Frontier Town is when there are raids on caravan, or the disappearance or murder of travelers from the village. And then, if villagers are disappearing, you may find spent arrows with the black flights, the black fletching that signifies goblins, because only goblins use those kinds of black feathers in their arrows. Or if they are dead, well, you find the goblin arrows sticking out of the corpses of the dead. But then you think, wait a minute, that can't be happening. 50 years ago, Duke Shiny Armor, the whole reason he's a Duke now is that he led a contingent that went and wiped out every goblin band within 50 miles of Frontier Town. So how did these guys get here? Why are they here? What's going on? Oh, players, those are questions for later tiers. For right now, you just go find the places the goblins have recently moved in with and deal with them any way you can. Say, how much is the old Duke paying for each goblin scalp these days? Alright, so that's goblins at tier 1. They're your typical challenge for a low-level party, challenge in numbers. The more you go into, the more you're going to run into, maybe some warg riders, maybe some bugbears and hobgoblins to flesh out the population of goblins within each of these hideouts and everything. Alright, so now we move on to tier 2. As tier 2 rolls around, your PCs may start to discover the goblinoids they are encountering are not intentionally encroaching on the lands of the good folk in the civilized lands. They're actually part of a group of goblins that's fleeing an entire goblinoid nation that lives beyond the frontier of civilization. Oh, an entire nation of goblinoids? Oh, wait a minute. How did that happen? Where did they come from? So, some of the goblins the PCs fight in Tier 2, they may show signs of torture or even mutilation that seems to be months or years old. And you capture a few of them and you question them, and they're going to tell you that a dark new leader has risen in the Goblinoid nation. This leader is consolidating power and imprisoning dissidents for torture. There's even rumors that this leader is sacrificing enemies, both goblinoid enemies within the kingdom and other humanoids that they capture outside the kingdom, to some dark power that is behind this leader's rise to control the Goblin Nation. Uh-oh. Alright, this is starting to sound a little ominous. This is more than just a bunch of goblin raiders on the border of civilization. This is going to be a little bit more serious. So that's what you guys find out at Tier 2. So now in Tier 3, now we start to have some strategery, if you will. The civilized lands, the civilized kingdom, the Duke and his allies, the king of the elves, the queen of the dwarves, the potentate of the gnomes, the sheriff of the shires. They all get together, and they are going to come and find out what's behind all of this, and they're going to get to the bottom of it. So help us, all the gods in the pantheon. All right, so when the party reaches Tier 3, they learn that this fanatic Goblinoid leader is amassing an army to invade the civilized lands that the PCs call home. So now, there's a bunch of different missions that can be done. And the PCs will probably undertake several of these. They may not undertake all of them. They may be a specialist that does just one kind of mission over and over again. Whatever. So, PCs might be called to infiltrate the Goblinoid kingdom and gather intelligence to help the leaders of civilization plan a defense. In one mission, they must infiltrate a Goblinoid war camp and steal invasion plans from the tent of a hobgoblin warlord without alerting the entire camp. So, now, this is where, yeah, you may think, oh, God, it's just goblins. Yeah, but there's like 2,000 goblins in this war camp. 2,000 goblins, 500 hobgoblins, 50 bugbears. All right. Now, you want to ring the dinner bell and tell them all at the same time that, enemies are in the camp? I don't think so. Because I don't care how high level you are. You have that many enemies on you, it's not going to be a good day for you. So, that could be one mission that you have. On another mission, you go deep behind enemy lines, and the PCs learn about all of the factions within the Goblin Nation, including perhaps they run across, if you want to throw some wrinkles in there, run across an underground group of pacifists that are trying to oppose the Goblinoid leader with non-violent resistance. Yeah, you got a Goblin Gandhi in there somewhere. Okay. What do your leaders of civilized lands want to do about that? What do your PCs want to do about that? Can you trust a pacifist goblin? Who knows? All right. Finally, as the party gets close to the seat of power for the Goblinoid kingdom, they discover something about this fanatical leader. They discover the fanatical leader has a mad plan to summon several Goblinoid deities to the natural world in the flesh to help goblins terrorize the entire continent. Yes, I stole that straight out of the plot for Tyranny of Dragons. Cult of the Dragon wants to raise Tiamat in the flesh from Avernus to the material world. Okay, so these guys want to bring Maglubliet and a couple of his cronies to the natural world. What could possibly go wrong with that plan? Furthermore, how are the PCs going to stop that plan? That's what we're going to find out in Tier 4. All right. Now you're starting to see everything has fallen into place. You understand why these raids are happening, why there's more goblins around, what's going on. There's something ain't right in Goblin Nation over there. So now, at Tier 4, once the full horror of the mad Goblinoid leader's plan is known, the PCs are part of a multi-pronged effort to thwart the plans of their enemy. So, in the civilized lands, kingdoms with fractious relationships need to set aside their differences and raise armies for mutual defense against the impending Goblinoid hordes. Maybe the PCs are diplomats on this side of the front. Maybe they are going around trying to figure out what the Dwarf Kingdom needs so that they'll send armies along with the Elf Kingdom. What does the Elf Kingdom need from the humans or the halflings so that they will contribute to the effort? What do the gnomes need so that they will do their share? What do the humans need so they'll do their part? What do the halflings need? Or how can the halflings be recruited to help the war effort? So these are that may be one kind of mission that your party has in that tier of the campaign. So then diplomats are dispatched on dangerous missions to contact factions of the Goblinoids that oppose the Mad Leader's plans. Now, may not just be going to try to reach these pacifists we learned about. We may be going and trying to talk to the hobgoblins, for crying out loud. The hobgoblins, they don't like this goblin shaman that's come to power. They think the hobgoblins ought to be in control. Hey, yeah, Mr. Hobgoblin, I know I'm a dwarf diplomat, and normally we don't see eye to eye, but today we have a common enemy. How can we help you thwart what old Crazy Eyes over there wants to do? Maybe the PCs are part of a delegation. Either they are diplomats themselves, or they are in the retinue of an NPC diplomat that's going over there, and they have to provide the muscle and maybe some persuasion or intimidation to help the diplomat get their mission done. Lastly, there's gonna need someone daring and experienced that's gonna have to be dispatched to the heart of the Goblinoid kingdom to infiltrate the seat of power and slay the mad warlock or shaman leader of the Goblinoids before the mad plan to summon the goblin gods can be enacted. That is going to be like your major showdown, the climax of your campaign, is going and trying to fight. And of course, the ritual is going to be in progress when you get there. And there's going to be a timer. And you're going to have to succeed within a certain amount of time, or else, oh crap, here comes this goblinoid god right through the gate, and now we got a lot more trouble on our hands. So that kind of is your tier 1 through tier 4. So now let's go and take a look at the campaign summary. How does campaign play out? All right, Nugris Glagminic. I'm using random name generator for goblins. Nugris Glagminic. She is a powerful goblin shaman, and she was once outcast from the Atrozomor Empire for sacrificing goblinoid infants to the nameless Stalker. Stalker, the goblin god of hate and death. Yeah, Nugris, she ain't a very nice lady. While Nugris was in exile, she grew far more powerful than anyone believed possible due to a pact with some sort of eldritch power. How powerful is she? She's so powerful that in our campaign here, we are going to give her the name and the physical appearance of a goblin, but we are going to slap that on the stat block of something like a pit lord. I mean, we're talking anywhere something like a CR 18 to CR 21, just extra planar badass creature. That is going to be the leader of the goblins, but you're just going to change the creature type to Goblinoid, and you're going to let it keep all of its resistances because, hey, it's a campaign, it's D&D, it's magic. You don't have to explain how it works, it just works. All right. So now, in a campaign of terror, Nugris first seized power, and then she tortured and sacrificed the old leaders of the Atrozomor Empire. The very ones that had her exiled. A number of goblinoids fled in terror. Hey, those are the ones that you guys ran into in Tier 1. Far more, however, bent to the will of the new despot in just out of sheer fear and terror for their lives. So now, as Nugrus's enemies flee before her, she plans a ritual that will summon both Stalker and Kurgorbayeg in the flesh to the natural world. To fuel this ritual, she needs the blood of 1,000 sacrifices from where? From your party's civilized lands. Victims that she's been mobilizing her armies to capture and bring back to her even now. So yes, those big armies that we saw in Tier 3, those aren't armies of invaders. Those are armies coming to snatch sacrifice victims. Oh yeah, they'll probably snatch like 10,000 people and figure that 9,000 of them will die on the way back to the capital. And the ones that die, those can go into cookpots. The rest of them, they will be there for Nugrus to do her ritual. And guess what? In Tier 4, when your party shows up, you're going to find all of these victims up there in the middle of the ritual. And, things are happening. And perhaps we're in a cycle of this ritual where at the end of every round of combat, some sort of effect goes off and a random number of those victims just have their souls ripped out of them and they boil up towards some big portal that's beginning, or rift that's beginning to open, that where the goblin deities are going to come through if you can't stop this leader in time. So of course, you're not going to have this big, ultra-powerful leader there by herself. No. You're not only going to have Goblinoids that have been forced under her thrall. She's so powerful, she's probably got some ogrekin. She's probably got some different kinds of orcs and everything that are, bowing to her will. Maybe she has some trolls. Maybe she has some giants. Might even have a young adult dragon or two that are there that you have to contend with. So yeah, this is gonna be a big, huge fight that is going to test your party to their limits. It's the kind of fight where you as the DM will not be happy unless there are at least 2 or 3 of the PCs in the party absolutely, completely dead on the floor at the end of the party. Hit hard enough that they don't even get saving throws. They just dead. That's the kind of epic fight, epic battle that you should have with this Goblinoid leader. Now, as I said a few minutes ago when we started this is just one idea, one way that you could build a campaign where the primary antagonist for your party, all the way from level 1 to all the way from Tier 1 up through Tier 4, is going to be Goblinoids. And the theme is going to be sort of a resurgence of Goblinoid power that hasn't been seen perhaps in recorded history. So that's the kind of thing that we want to deal with today. And I think that goblins are one of the few monster types in D&D that you can actually build an entire campaign around them as the core central antagonist for your campaign. A lot of other monsters are sort of, they're in a band, they're in a range, and you don't encounter them when you're too low, and then eventually you get too high that they just are a speed bump for your party, if that. But goblins, because you can use them in great numbers, and because you can ally them with a lot of strange powers, you can really turn them into a formidable opponent all the way from the beginning of the campaign to the end of the campaign. All right. So, yeah. Well, yes, Skyline. Tier 1 is level 1 through 4. Tier 2 is 5 through 10. Tier 3 is 11 through 16, and Tier 4 is 17 through 20. So, for whatever reason, and I'm not quite sure how they decided to break it up this way, but it's 4 levels for Tier 1 and Tier 4, and 6 levels each for 6 levels each for Tier 2 and Tier 3. So that's the way they broke that up in 5th edition. All right, and with that, with our campaign summary, that is going to do it for our 5-part series on goblins. But it's not the end of Monster Monday. No, no, no. Friends, Monster Monday will continue, and next week, I have been inspired by the fact that we've gotten quite a few views the last couple of weeks on Sundays. Our big climactic battle that we had in Kamigawa against one of the guardians of that realm was pretty popular on Twitch and has gotten a lot of views over there on the Twitch channel. So what I want to do is I want to pull the curtain back a little bit since the party has already faced it, and I want to talk about how I created Ryusei the Falling Star as an enemy for my players to fight in a D&D campaign. And this is very much a homebrew job, and I will tell you right now, and I'll tell you again next week, that the way I created Ryusei for my game probably will not work for your game. You may use a similar process to the process I used, but because of the specific abilities, resistances, capabilities, and teamwork of my party, if you put this monster against a party of the same level in another homebrew game, it might either be way too difficult for them to handle, or it might be way too easy for them to handle. So it's just you've got to, anytime you listen to what somebody has done for homebrew, you really have to take that with a grain of salt and look more at the process they use and not the actual mechanics that they wind up with. Because the mechanical stats are probably designed for a single specific game and are not necessarily going to be compatible with other games and other homebrew games, because every group of players is different, every DM is different. I might look at something and go, that's a little too tough, or that's going to make my characters a little bit overpowered. And another DM might be like, oh no, hey, I think my characters need more stuff. And tough? No, it's not tough enough by itself. I'm going to add a few more things to the battlefield. And, could very well be right. It all depends on the experience level of the players, the classes you have, the teamwork, and the number of bodies that are being thrown against the enemy. All right. That is going to do it for our thing. Let me take a look at the. Let me take a look at the chat. Yes, the breath weapon was pretty impressive on that particular monster. I liked what I did with the breath weapon. There was some fun surprises in there for him. Hey, Amish, good to see you. Yeah, now there's a Amish brought up a good point, something about tier 5. There are a few third-party source books. I don't believe, I could be wrong, but I don't believe that Wizards of the Coast has yet published anything official on epic levels. They may have made some oblique references to it, but they don't have like a fleshed out source book that tells you their idea of what level 21 and above would be. I certainly have my own ideas, and I've got, I've already sketched out some things a couple of years ago for a game that is running right now, where I think it's conceivable that that game could go beyond level 20. And so that's just a draft. I'm very willing to see if Wizards of the Coast ever publishes um, anything themselves, or when I get closer to, needing a tier 5, going to some of these other third-party source books that have been published, based on what people are saying about them and how balanced people think they are and whatnot, and looking at what those other folks have come up with to see if the idea I had was even in the ballpark, or whether I need to adopt a different strategy for epic levels. All right. So I'm just going to go on into the wrap up then. I have been DM Gallibond. This has been the end of our series on Goblins and Goblinoids. I want to thank everybody for chiming in and watching, and whether you're watching the live stream or whether you've been watching the archives over on YouTube. I have 3 other streams that I do every week over on Twitch. Sundays, it's the Walker of Waterdeep campaign. That's the one with that monster we're going to look at next week, where that came from. Thursday night is the Sword Coast Chronicles. That's sort of a love letter to the published 5th edition campaigns. Right now, the party is adventuring in the happy, sunny, misty lands of Barovia. And then on Saturday night, gosh, I still haven't changed this slide. I need to update it. Saturday night, we are now going into our second week of character creation this coming Saturday for the Saturday Night Greyhawk campaign. We are going to be playing 2nd edition D&D set in the world of Greyhawk. And the introduction I am giving to these players, which some of them are excited about, and all of them tell me they have never played. So I'm really tickled that I've got a bunch of people that haven't played this before. We are going to play through the original Temple of Elemental Evil storyline. And I have plans based on the fact that people really were excited about that. I have plans to build an entire campaign around some of the greatest hits of old D&D. So we're talking about things like White Plume Mountain and, Castle Greyhawk, the ruins of Castle Greyhawk, potentially going to places like, maybe we might be going to the expedition to the Barrier Peaks. And we will be hunting for the components of the Rod of 7 Parts. And you know that 7th and final part, you know where that's going to be. That's going to be deep in the Tomb of Horrors. So yes, I am going to just send these characters on Saturday night into a bunch of fun, classic, heroic dungeons and adventures that I hope they will enjoy, and I hope that you guys over on Twitch will enjoy. That will all happen over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Gallibond. The archives of everything that I do on Twitch can be found on over at my YouTube channel, bit.ly/YTDM Gallibond for that. And we do have a Patreon if you guys want to see more stuff done. And that's about it. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out tonight. I really appreciate it. Hope we will see you back here again for Monster Monday and for some of the live stream games as well. And as I always say, have a good night and remember to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Take care, everybody.